Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Picks Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary. Hey guys, we're here today with Bunny Young. How are you?
I am wonderful, feeling blessed and honored to be on this podcast with all these listeners.
So glad to have you here. You want to tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
So, I'm a retired therapist in the aspect that I quit working with families and children and started doing organizational psychology because I found that most of the families' burnout was around, intermarital relationships and stress with the home. And this is those individuals that sometimes causes that stress, but she's definitely
Hi,
completely
cutie.
welcome.
What's your
So
name?
say hi. Hi. What's your name? All right. And then Victoria's going to run away to daddy. Go run to daddy.
She's so cute.
So she's adjusting to this new life. And she's always been a part of my business and company because I kind of built a company around them, but so I could be with them. And then you hear my husband as well. So now your listeners just get the whole perspective. So
Of
as
your
I'm
awesome
discussing my
family.
marriage, that's my husband. So as a professional, I did that switch and went into organizations because stress with your family causes a lot of issues at work, and then stress at work causes a lot of issues with your family. And a lot of therapists focus on the individual, and I focus on the organization. So I just felt like teaching the skills and the coping mechanisms to individuals at home was not fair, because once they got into the workplace and an organization, if their companies didn't support that mental wellness, then it caused that same amount of tension, and then it was just this horrible cycle that it carried into back to their home life. So currently, right now, I'm a business therapist, and then I also have a service animal who's chilling behind me because I have a heart condition, and I recognize that this kind of working yourself to death, that was the theme I was seeing, was really just not an option for my particular individual circumstance.
Wow, you already had your experience in one area and just been able to take it and help so much more people in a different area. So what would you say is the number one skill that somebody needs at work so that way both parts of their life work well?
I think trust, and that's a seed that is planted through authentic, vulnerable interaction. So what I teach is self-awareness, self-management, team awareness, and team management. And that team can be your family. It can be your marital unit. It can be your relationship with your children. But without that willingness to plant that seed of trust and to work on that seed on an hourly and daily basis, that's where I see most relationships break down, is because they're questioning all of the work and all of the homework and all of the self-work that they're doing, because they either are having an inability to trust themselves, trust the process, or trust the human that they're going through this with.
So for someone who has a hard time trusting, it doesn't just happen overnight. How does one build into it so that way they could become more trusting?
I think building a better relationship with yourself and acknowledging which feelings are yours and which feelings are somebody else's. So as a therapist, what I started acknowledging is that a rough day at work translated to a rough day at home. And we kind of spoke a little bit about that. But my ability to acknowledge and define and somewhat like label, this is somebody else's feeling. Or if my husband had a difficult day and walks in and immediately snaps at me, it's like the recognition or the conversation, the permission to say, is that something that I did? And it can be a verbal conversation, or it can just be something in my mind where is that something that I did, or is there something else going on? And so it's an awareness piece for the trust. But once you can trust yourself to know yourself, then it's impossible to trust others without trusting yourself. So that's the first step. So I work with horses a lot and use horses in our team work. And the reason that I use horses is because they are prey animals. And so this thought of climbing on a horse's back and going for a ride, it's like a lion climbing on top of a zebra and the zebra saying, okay, like, let's go. There's this aspect, I think it's the story of the frog and the scorpion, of like, how can I trust you? And the scorpion says, well, if I sting you, we're both going to drown. So there is that trust. Of course, that story doesn't end very well. But when I'm working with couples or when I'm working with teams and I take them out to the ranch, people think that we're going for a horseback ride. Well, that relationship with a human and trust started hundreds of hours ago when the horse just saw a predator walk into a stall or walk into a round pen, and that trust had to be built. And in order for that to be successful, the individual who started that relationship, the human that started that relationship, had to be able to be self-aware enough to know, like, they're not going to be too anxious. That's why I use horses, is because it demonstrates, in order to have a successful relationship with an equine as a predator animal, you have to have this sense of vulnerability and this authenticity. Because if you walk in with either an emotion of, I'm going to take control of this animal, or I don't know what the heck I'm doing, both of those emotions will drive that prey animal away because they don't feel like it's a safe space. And so the worst possible scenario to be in to try to build a better relationship with a spouse, with a family member, is in a situation where you don't feel safe.
Yeah, it starts safe physically and then safe emotionally, yeah, is the beginning of the relationship. What's the most interesting story you have about trust?
So I think my most interesting story that your listeners are going to love is my first year of marriage and how my husband and I built trust. And so my husband and I had a plan to get married in July, and my husband's a stuntman. And so he got a contract to go overseas and do a stunt show in China. And we were dating at the time. And he basically came to me and he said, they said, you can go with me, but we have to be married. And so over, I think in a period of 10 days, we got married and went over to China. And I cannot not have a job or not have a purpose or not have a function. So this idea of being like a stay-at-home wife in China was just not going to happen. And so I asked the stunt team if I could work, if I could be a stunt woman. And so they wrote me into the script. So I spent the first year of our marriage. My husband played, it was like a Bonnie and Clyde show. And so my husband played the lead police officer, like figure, like a Brad Pitt character, hunting down Bonnie and Clyde. Well, I was Bonnie. And so we spent the first year of marriage with me like shooting at him, trying to blow him up, hitting him with a car, throwing him off a building, and kissing another man. And, that's like hilarious when we talk about it. But if you think about from a marriage perspective, a lot of trust, a lot of risk management, a lot of practical tools and communication went down into me not putting my husband's life in jeopardy. So yes, I fired this like bazooka at him, but he had to trust me that it was going to be a near miss. It wasn't a real bazooka, but like there were so many things. He tied one of my life knots for my rappel. And so I had to put my life in his hand, which if you're a rock climber or you do rappels, I strongly encourage you to check your own knot. But there was just so many little things that built up over a year that we realized, this stunt work actually laid the foundation of a solid marriage. And to the point that when I came home, my husband's like, we should